Good evening. This is Don Colgan with yet another in my continuing series of heavyweight contenders of the mid to late 1960s into the early 1970s. And tonight we're going to discuss a former world's heavyweight champion and probably for a good length of time one of the most intimidating heavyweights in boxing history, and that would be Charles "Sonny" Liston. And Liston was a ranked heavyweight contender after he lost the return match to Muhammad Ali by a first-round knockout in Lewiston, Maine. Sonny remained a championship contender into the early 1970s, his last fight being a bloodbath 10th-round technical knockout over Chuck Wepner. But what's interesting about Liston, he didn't fight in the WBA tournament, and he scored a lot of victories over some nondescript heavyweights, like Gerhard Zeck being one, Amos Lincoln being another. I guess his best victory was a knockout over Henry Clark, who was ranked 5th in the world at the time. Clark was not much of a puncher, but he was a good boxer. And then, of course, he was knocked out in the 9th round of a bout with a legitimate contender at the time, Leotis Martin. And Liston had put him down in the 5th round and seemed to have the fight in his favor when he was caught with a tremendous right-hand punch that knocked Liston down and out and effectively ended his career as a top-ranking heavyweight contender. Sonny never did fight elite fighters from 1966 through 1970. He remained a top 10 contender. There wasn't too much conversation about Sonny getting a title shot either. There was some talk of a third Patterson fight, which I happen to think Floyd would have had a much better chance, at least to survive past the first round, if it was held in 1967 or 1968. But he did not fight Quarry. He did not fight Frazier coming up, or Oscar Bonavena, or any of the really elite heavyweight, even Chavala, which would have been an interesting fight for Liston. Whatever the reason for that, I'm not sure. I don't know if he was blackballed, but he certainly didn't have the skill set he had when he steamrollered the heavyweight division in the late 1950s and won the title in 1962 and defended it once against Patterson. He certainly did not seem to be the intimidating, really killer of a heavyweight that he was then. But his career ended with the Wepner fight, and unfortunately, he was found dead months later, presumably from drugs. Would I consider Liston great? Well, from 1959 through 1963, it's hard to consider him anything but one of the most terrifying heavyweights in the history of boxing. He only had one title defense, and his skill set seemed to diminish after the one-round knockout to Ali. So Liston, a great fighter, a renowned heavyweight, but as far as the late 1960s to 1970, kind of a borderline threat to take the title, but always dangerous. All respect to Charles "Sonny" Liston.